Okay, good afternoon. I'm Anto Budiarjo. Welcome to Monday Live. This is something that we do every Monday afternoon as we try and figure out what the future lies for smarter buildings. It's really good to have you with us today. In case you're wondering who we are, profiles are listed on mondaylive.org, so head over there. And just a reminder that views expressed here in this hour are personal, not of any company or organization. And let's, as always, use the Zoom chat to make this whole thing interactive with your input. Always appreciate that. So we are in May, and our theme for this month is getting back to basics. So we're going to continue on that. I think we had a great show last week on that. And so our agenda today is getting back to basics, and the specific topic for today is the new basic, and I'll explain that in a minute, and hopefully to have some interesting discussion. But first, as always, got to hand it over to Ken. What's going on, Ken?
Lots as always. Up in the top left-hand corner where we always start, what I did is I went through and I just plucked off some of our most visited links. And the very top one is talking about OpenClaw for AI. That got up over 1,000. And the BACnet was hot on its heels with about 800 or 900. And then the one I did on understanding knowledge graphs did quite well as well. So you can kind of see a trend there that people are interested in what we're doing and also interested in how we're interfacing with AI. It's one big observation is BACnet is being looked at in a completely new light. I think what happened is BACnet, everybody sort of knew what BACnet did and they accepted it, but now they understand that BACnet is not only changing, but BACnet is basically part of this trip to the future and some of the stuff that they're doing. So it's going to be a very strong connection piece. So I think it's taken on a whole new life. Under that is our summary of last Monday Live, getting back to basics and what smart building industry actually needs. I think we did a reasonable capture of what was going on there. Then the next one we got was Niagara from the Niagara Summit. We got an article from Scott and Stephen from Tritium, just talking, and what they're saying is the shift towards intelligent buildings. They're sort of seeing that this is a layer on top of automation. And Anto and I had a little quick discussion about that, and he said that he didn't quite see it that way, but I said, what would you do if you were the Niagara folks that have an incredible connection to an awful lot of pieces? So I think that's going to be one of the basics that we should probably talk about, is that it means different things to different people, and their solutions will be implementing solutions on top of their existing platform. And I think that's a reality, and I think it's also beneficial. And I think a lot of the stuff we're talking about will be included in that. What they're defining is intelligent layered on top of automation. The one below that is written by Johnson Controls, the 5 global trends reshaping building automation. And you can see they're kind of taking almost the same kind of an approach, that they'll probably trowel intelligence on top of their platform. So I think that's kind of an interesting trend. And I think we should all be proud that we probably had something to do with help make that all happen. That's good. What they're over on the bottom now, getting down on the bottom left right-hand corner. We got some articles from Kimon. 6 days, 2 buildings, 1 lesson for the owners. That's a great article. And he's just explaining how knowledge graphs and the new way of thinking is working, and how we're able to put stuff together a lot easier than we were before. And actually, it's sort of digging into the bowels. So I'm seeing a bit of a conflict when you trowel intelligence on top of a platform or a walled garden, as we sometimes call them, or if you actually start getting into the bowels of it and you start moving your data into knowledge graphs, that you kind of end up with different solutions. So I think that's an interesting discussion that we should probably have. And Kimon has another article, Don't Let Open BIM Become an Orphan at Handover. And I think that has been a problem is everything we've done, we just turn it over and get paid and disappear. But all of this data now has to be living data, and the knowledge graphs sure seem to help that solution. How owners can extend into operational intelligence. I think that's a great article from Thomas Trang. Also, he actually generated an AI generated song to summarize our journey, which I thought was kind of cute. It's so as you're aware, AI can quite do a great job of writing a song. So basically, someone scripted it and put some of our words into it. It's kind of a fun listen if you want to poke on that link. Just before I go to the bottom one, I want to talk about the recap of Vegas. This got really good action, which we put a lot of effort into our education sessions for AHR, and we're now just starting to do that for Chicago. But we kind of all forget about them, and actually bringing this one back up again, it actually took on a bit of a life again, and people started listening and re-listened to what AI had to say, and that prompted them to actually sit down and listen to the actual YouTube. So we're pleased with that result. At the bottom, we've got the Web Summit in Vancouver is going on right now, and Greenold is presenting in the growth stage. And I think this is a bit of a harbinger for our industry that we're going to be crossing the floor and we're going to be appearing at more and more IT conferences, because to them we are how the IoT will grow into our industry, learning some of the stuff. We're sort of challenging them. We're putting out some ideas here, and we're actually in some of the stuff that Kimon's doing and the presentations they've made with asset management and stuff. We're catching the attention of the IT industry, which is good. So I think we all should be complimented and keep on doing what we're doing. Back to you, Anto.
Thank you, Ken. Over to you, Rick.
Was a busy week last week, and I didn't update the slide, but we will have the recording, or at least the highlights of the recording, probably most of the recording of our first Thursday town hall that happened on Thursday. We positioned that town hall as a sort of a preview or a dress rehearsal of what we intend to do going forward. So I think June 5th is the next one. And, we had some, as everything, when we were trying to create an event, we had some calendaring issues, and we had but we had, great attendance, and we had a great flow of the highlights of all the different working groups. The summary of that and the recording will be up on the website soon. By next week, we'll be able to point to that link for being able to look at the highlights of the town hall. And it really was, I think it was a really it was perfectly rehearsed, not at all, in other words. But it turned out to be a really good flow of the working group leaders, each taking the microphone one after another and describing where they are with the working group or the interest group, and then sort of what's next. And I think it'll be really helpful for people who want to look at that recording and hear from the leaders of the working groups. I think we had 12 or 13 different of the leaders that each took the microphone one by one, and a lot of you are on the call right now. I appreciate it again. It was a really good first step. And I think it also is going to bring up a lot of the intended networking and the connecting of faces with names of how to get involved, who's doing what in the different areas. And so I was really excited. Another key thing that we did was Sabine Lamb was part of the call, and she sort of introduced what her involvement with C4SB is going to be relative to getting the word out and expanding the ecosystem of companies and individuals that are participating in the different work. And so we welcome her to the C4SB team. And the big debate is whether she's going to get a C4SB.org email. That's the question that's yet to be resolved. Other than that, that's our update from C4SB.
Thank you.
I'd
Thank you,
love
Rick.
to capture as much of that as we can into articles and text. I think for me, I attended the meeting, and the most important part was just to understand better the working groups. And it doesn't need to be long, but just even like a 15 to 20 word description of each group and it's intended to do and who the contact people are. So I hope that'll all appear on your website and we'll be able to highlight it.
Yeah, and we want to have the link and the summary available to automated buildings as soon as we have that. You'll be among the first to see it.
Super. Okay, because I think it's an important piece. You're doing some really amazing work. The town hall was very informative. A couple of the groups, I wasn't exactly clear what they were doing, and I think that helped. It brought clarity to me. So I think it's bringing clarity to me. It's something that we need to publish.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Ken. Any other thoughts or news from anyone? Hearing none, we shall proceed. So getting back to basic is our theme for May. So we started this last week, and first we kind of just made sure that we were sort of very focused on smarter buildings, types of basics required for that. Last week we basically talked about this sort of range of the what is basic to us, to the panelists on Monday Live. So this is kind of the range, and this is actually quite interesting because these are what I think you would consider the sort of what makes up a building right now and in the future, especially with AI going on there. So that was an interesting conversation last week, as Ken said. And when we had our Wednesday planning call last week, we were sort of talking about this. And we're also talking about this in the context of all of the enormous changes that's going on right now in technology and everywhere else. And it sort of led us to the topic of this week, which is that these basics that we talked about last week, they probably are not going to go away because they are basic, so they're fundamental. But there are a new sort of set of basics that we think sort of starting to emerge, or needs to emerge, maybe is a better way of putting it. And this is really what we want to talk about today. So these are kind of slightly different kind of basics. The connected systems is almost what Ken was talking about earlier in the context of the cloud Niagara stuff. Data by default is obviously something that we've all been talking about a lot, specifically Steve Fay, right, Steve?
I'm the guy.
AI assistance, it's so it's obviously all around us. Governance, secure, and outcome focus. And here, obviously, you have to think about what the outcome you're looking for. So you have to be careful that you're not too narrow in your outcome that you're targeting to do something, to deliver some solution. So really sort of an interesting sort of a change from last week and what was sort of the original basics, as it were. So I'm going to just open this out up for discussion with the floor. Anybody want to start?
Can I jump right in? What I'd like to do is just the summary of last Monday, I think, is a good lead in. And the bottom line in the summary, it says the industry has spent years talking about what AI can do will do for buildings. But the more useful question is what buildings need to become before AI can do anything with them. And I think that's what came from the first week, is that we identified a basic problem that we all agree that we're going to use AI. And if we're going to use AI, then there's some reformatting that we need to do, and we need to start thinking more in knowledge graphs and RDF and all of that. So I think that's a good starting point. But
Yeah,
anybody that wants to pick up
that's sort of a combination of one and two, really. It's about connected systems and the data structure of it, and obviously feeding AI. Cool.
But what kind of came out of it was the new basic is it's got to include AI, because we know we're going to use it, and so we can no longer look at the old basic of what we were doing, because we need to have that data freed and have so agents can actually do what it is we want them to do. I think it's enabling. The enabling part, I think, is an important piece that we should talk a little bit about.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess to that point, Ken, I'm not, I really like what this slide is, doing, Anto, in terms of, laying out the high level themes. And I think in terms of driving the industry with its current and coming generations of products, I think all of this is doable. I'm not sure we've had sufficient conversation about about the legacy buildings and how because there's so much of it. And if we spend enough time articulating or thinking through how we transform that legacy or installed base into the new basic. I have no doubt we can do this with products that are, got introduced in the last couple of years. My question is, what about the systems that were installed 10, 15, 20 years ago? Are they going to be left in the lurch, or is there a path forward for them?
I think, Steve, that's why I'm really fascinated on this work that's going on in the PAE building, right? Because I think, every time we come to that subject about existing infrastructure, it kind of becomes a little nebulous, right? And we all get it and understand all the context, but then seeing something like the PAE, which some could argue is not that old, but still old enough for us
Right.
to have as a case study. That's why I really love that work that's going on there, just so everyone put their eyes on it and touch it and see what it really means, right? Because I suspect as they do that work, some of this stuff is going to come out, some of this stuff is going to become irrelevant. So yeah, that was a use case, but there's no value there per se, or the cost is too high, or those
Right.
sort of things. So having something tangible like the PA is, to me, is a big deal in this space.
And just to build on that a little bit, what we're hoping to show is a definition of basics, and not the only definition of basics, but a broad enough definition that can be replicated or used as a fundamental, or as a not last resort, but it's something that can be modeled and can be shown. A lot of different vendors are running off with their definitions of this whole stack, and but what we're to Steve's point, and to Anno's point, that the existing installed systems, if we can show a way, not the only way, but a way to get most existing buildings and most existing systems through numbers 1 and 2, then 3, 4, and 5 become sort of easier. But the 1 and 2 are kind of where we've been hitting, to the point Ken made. It's like, oh, AI, yay, AI. oh crap, I can't get AI to see all these different systems. So how do I get the systems? And again, the PAE building I'm glad that the PAE building, when you see a picture of it, it looks like it's 100 years old. Not, it's only 5 years old.
Oh, geez.
But the systems, it was built to look, fit in with the neighborhood. So it's built to look like it's a legacy building. But the point is the system, the building's only 5 years old. So the systems are only 5 years old. But they're the systems that were engineered and designed about 15
Yeah.
or 20 years ago, right? And so it's actually a pretty good proxy and for instance, the water heaters and the recycling system have no connections whatsoever, but we're using submetering to at least see what the run times of those things are. And so we're creating a model of the basics of what can be done. And that's where, my thoughts relative to this whole new basic is how to fall back to, okay, what are the basic ways of being able to get that system either up through a legacy proprietary system and make it available, or if you don't want to take it through the legacy system, well, let's look at some new ways to be able to get that mechanical system or that data system. How can we get it exposed, get it to a knowledge graph? That's one of our sort of centers of the universe. And it is a fundamental, not controversial technology. So that's a nice basic. And then once it's in a knowledge graph, how do you add context to it using things like 223 or such, and then it magically is accessible to AI, and showing that basic path is what we're wanting to do. And so we're not trying to highlight, wow, the only way to do it, and we're also not trying to highlight the most complicated or sophisticated or we're trying to show that this is a basic way of getting systems to be made available, visible.
I think that's a key point, though,
Yeah.
Rick, in that, when you said like you're trying to focus on one and two, how to get to the other side. But in reality, right, people on this call and many of us who have done this in the years, we've done a lot of focus on one and two in the past, right? And even some of the large suppliers in the industry have platforms that can do one and two. And, we've all, every one of us probably on this call has built platforms that can do one and two. But I think what's really changing the equation is the three, four, and five, right?
Right.
And that part of the challenge with the one and two side of the equation, and everybody who's built platforms and solutions, and again, including all the big five, built platforms and solutions, the value proposition on the other side has always been tenuous, right? I mean, and to be able to execute on that. So I think from my perspective, there's a lot of hope that the three, four, and five, especially three and five, four built in, people are trying to say, look, maybe there's a different way that we look at the value that's produced by one and two. Even though we've been able to do one and two in the past, sometimes with very expensive technologies, sometimes with cheap technologies. But in a lot of ways, what I'm looking at the PAE thing for is the way that you're doing one and two to get to the AI and the outcome focused pieces that are over there, which is different to how it's a different it's a different perspective of why we're doing one and two, right? We've always been doing the one and two, regardless what technologies you apply over there. Does that kind of make sense? But I mean, I don't want to denigrate the fact that we've been doing one and two for a long time. What's really changing more is on the right-hand side. Yeah, there you go, Scott. It's a different framing of the problem and the outcomes.
So Rick, I haven't followed, the PAE work as much as some of the other guys on the call here. In terms of the silos that are represented by the PAE building, okay? Could you just spend a minute or two summarizing what those silos are? And the reason I mention this is because you brought up the fundamental, and I agree with this, the PAE is an example of how you can move from one and two into three, four, and five. And I'm just curious, in saying that, how many silos have been addressed or are being addressed in the PAE world?
Great question. We are literally kind of getting, we're going to go back to basics and we're going to diagram this so that the story is easier to communicate.
Right.
But silos, start with the design documents, the BIM documents.
Mhm.
That's a silo. Let's just
Yeah,
set that
absolutely.
aside. The lighting system
Mhm.
was a silo. The the batteries, the literal bank of batteries was a siloed system. It wasn't that data was not being incorporated or being leveraged anywhere else. The
Mhm.
building automation system is also another silo.
Mhm.
The solar panels were a siloed system. The water heating is still a siloed system. Um, and I'm sure I'm forgetting something. There's other
How
people that
about
are.
security, access control, video surveillance, anything of that sort?
So,
Fire and life
so,
safety?
so we are going to demonstrate, we're going to bring in indoor air quality. We're going to bring in some cameras. We're going to bring in some security things to
Mhm.
model what that will look like to integrate that into the system.
Okay.
So right now they don't have a camera system. They don't have car
Right.
chargers. They don't have a badge access system. There's a variety of things they don't have, but we're going to model how that system would be brought into the existing system, brought into the knowledge graph, and then be made available for innovative apps.
What
Uh,
about, I would think they got to have fire and life safety, right?
yes, and we can see the fire panel, and we can we can see the little lights on it, and we don't have any integration to it yet.
Okay. But that's going to be included ultimately.
To be able to show recipes for how those different systems can be added,
Right.
absolutely, that's what we're doing.
Okay. But you see why I'm pushing on this point? Because if we're going to really address the big picture, and particularly number five, outcome focused, I think it's be able to really tell the story from soup to nuts, you know, across all the most popular and common silos is really important. I think the PAE represents a great opportunity to illustrate that so that no matter who we're tracking or telling the story to, no matter what silo they're coming from, they can then look at this one thing and say, okay, this is how they did it.
Yeah, and I forgot the electrical panels, or maybe I did say electrical panels, but the electrical system is one of
Oh,
the things
good.
that actually, there's a
Power
ton of
distribution.
data
Yeah.
coming from electrical panels.
Okay.
So yes, to try and think about as many different systems as anybody can imagine. Now, one of the other things that we're doing is C4SB is we are spinning up, and I see that Dave Holmberg's on the call and Anto's obviously on the call. We're going to be announcing the digital building profiles effort. And the digital building profiles process and concept will be where all the different systems are cataloged or inventoried, if you will. And it'll be really interesting to have that list of all the different potential systems that could be connected. And what you're describing, Steve, is every time I think I've named every system I can imagine, there's five or six other ones that somebody else comes up with. And we came up with another one today. They've got operable windows that are supposed at the PAE building that are
Wow.
supposedly integrated into the HVAC system to be able to, open up the windows when there's the fresh
Oh,
air opportunity
okay.
and energy recovery.
Yeah.
So we keep adding to the list.
Windows. Sounds
Operable windows, yeah.
anyway. Well, this is good. This is good. I'm very pleased to hear that that the that without going after kimono, that the kimono is that wide. So
I see, Jim, any thoughts on this sort of evolution?
No, I think it's interesting. I largely agree with what everyone said. As usual, I'm focused on the outcome piece and
yeah.
what the higher level value propositions will be and what people will be able to pay for and what they want to see. So as you integrate these systems, what are you going to do with them? And as Ken mentioned, as AI and work from home and other things change the evolution of what a workplace is and what its reason to be is. How that evolves around the outcome is what I'm most interested in here. Everything
I
else is
think,
plumbing.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Ken.
Oh, I'm just, BACnet is starting to become a key to this whole thing. You asked the question last week about what I really want is how can I generate these knowledge graphs? And it appears that the start of the knowledge graph through the new BACnet standard is possible to take all of that existing data that exists in BACnet and basically create at least the start of a knowledge graph. You know, I might have to add more data to make it completely useful. But the fact that we've actually done that and the fact that BACnet has acknowledged that, I would like to know more about the power of that and probably as well as the power of the limitations. I'm not
I
sure.
think that there's always been a lot of value encoded in BACnet, Ken, and that was the principle that we used to get into the analytics business 25 years ago. Was we knew that it was in there, but it actually turns out that it's not just BACnet, but the points list of a building automation system also contains the relationship of those BACnet points, or which allows you to some extent derive a topology. So it goes beyond BACnet, but BACnet is certainly the foundation. But using the points list, which contains those BACnet points, I now have the points and the relationship between the points. So I can go a long way, with a little bit from the BIM models and as-built models that Kimon might be able to get us together with BACnet and a points list will get us a large way to the knowledge graph.
But I think
But I think
that's
I
an
think what it
important.
takes.
Oh, sorry, Ken, go ahead, man.
Go ahead, and
I was just going to say, just to jump on that a bit, Jim. One from my perspective, the fact that BACnet is still here and around and exists and has evolved and is moving in all these directions and everything that you said is actually a huge deal, right? And no offense, Tracy, but the fact that one has survived and it's become the dominant one that everyone's aware of, as opposed to when we used to have multiples,
None taken, by the way.
fair enough.
Not my thing. I just made money from it.
There you go. But I think that's a really important point, though, Jim. The fact that BACnet has gone, from my perspective, strength to strength, right? One of my biggest fears in this space was always that it would have lost ground or lost, the people behind it had lost interest and it kind of petered away, because I think that would have done everyone a huge backstep, right? God knows where we would have gone, in what direction and that sort of stuff. But the fact that it continued to evolve, it has really made our life easier, and it has gone in that direction of what we're talking about. And all the things you talked about, all the relationships that's buried in all that stuff, the quality of the data that you can get out of BACnet. And by the way, I was just doing this literally the other week. Someone was arguing some IoT proprietary protocol to me, and we were doing a compare and contrast between it and what you could find in the BACnet. And the other thing was a joke. I was like, guys, come on, you've got 3 bits of data and a value.
Exactly.
You obviously don't understand my problems,
Yeah, what most people don't understand in the MQTT crowd is scale.
Yeah.
Scale and survivability over a long period of time. Because in our game, it's not just a question of can I get it and can I get it mapped? But what's it going to be like 25 years from now when it still needs to run?
Yeah.
Right? And so it's longevity and scale. And meanwhile, there are lots of things that are going on behind the scenes that people don't see much of. So if we look at what's going on in BACnet for governed and secure, we've been working on BACnet SC for 15 years.
Right.
And
Another good example.
it is basically beginning to be deployed at many, many large sites now. As I've always said, the adoption curve in this industry is something like a decade. It takes a decade from when the technology is introduced to when it hits main market. And BACnet SC is right on track for that, right? So introduced in 2019. So basically the early adopters are beginning to rise, and I think we'll see a lot more BACnet cybersecurity in the near term.
Cool.
So,
Yeah, I mean that's just another example of why I love that BACnet has survived and gone, because it deals with all that, right? And all those IoT guys, I've got to go back and ask the fundamental question. Okay, what's your cyber layer below the gateway? Oh dear, you know.
Right.
so I just realized this slide that the word open is not anywhere on the slide. Is that a problem? Shouldn't open not be one of the sort of the new basics?
It is, but it's almost taken for granted that it's there, Anto.
Yeah, I was
We've been
kind of
so
thinking that.
successful in getting it out there that, isn't that table stakes?
Well, we had an interesting discussion just prior to this call with a few of us, and something occurred to me in terms of the word open. And open and available
Yeah.
are two different concepts. That something can be quote unquote open by definition, but the information you need to access it is not available, or makes it not available. Too. It's a very minor tweak to that, but it got me thinking about, when we talk about open systems in the future, sometimes we think of things being like auto discoverable, right? I can just point my browser at this building and, suck in all the data and understand what's going on with the building and all the context, but that that's not necessarily true, right? So when we say open, we don't necessarily mean, auto discoverable and available for anyone to search it and find it and consume it
Yeah.
either.
I think there's a powerful point, Tracy, in that, what's happened in BACnet has gone way beyond the word open, right? I mean, it's the capabilities. You get the IoT, the MQT guys, again, they could argue, oh, your mind's open because you could just read the API. I go like, yeah, but that's not what I mean by open. I mean all this other stuff that I want with open. I want all the relationship data. I want depth of metadata. I want, I want scalability. I want security. And we've gone way past the term open, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
We're doing
And
open. We're doing what BACnet does as a disservice by just calling it open.
the other thing that occurs to me in listening to all of this is the amount of evolution that's going to occur here. That, we're not going to wake up 5 years from now and all buildings are going to meet, all the criteria here that we're talking about in its most ideal form. There's going to be this long evolution of various layers and levels of openness and availability of data and so forth. It's pretty easy, for instance, right now to get access to thermostats that have open APIs, and to integrate them, with AI is a couple of days work tops at this point. So why, nobody's going to go back and change or do a lot of re-engineering on that information until there's a business case to do that. And as long as there are methods that are easy to accommodate along the way, I suspect we're going to have a lot of the existing sort of structure of things that we have currently for some time, right? If it's easy enough, then nobody's going to bother with it. So we're likely going to have a very mix and match version of what we ideally see is a world with open buildings out there for a really long time. Do you guys agree with that?
I agree, but kind of the point I was making earlier, I now use BACnet and all the capabilities and everything else built in as an open as my benchmark for any IoT guy coming in the door, right? So sure, you're open and sure I can do it. But if I'm comparing you against three others in the stack, the one who's closer to the benchmark, to the BACnet benchmark for me, is where my preference is technologically, right?
Yeah.
Now,
And that needs to
I don't get
be what
choices.
drives that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And until the end users and owners start really pushing the agenda, right? Because they know long term that's going to cut their costs, make their life easier. That's what's going to ultimately drive that.
Yeah.
But
Good.
with
We
the
know they
tools
all come
available
together.
now, it's getting easier and easier to get to data, even without some of the definitional stuff that we're working on here.
Right. Yeah, I just love using the BACnet standard. And the beauty about using in my space when I use the BACnet standard, first of all, I have to spell the word BACnet to them as first place, which is always fun. Um, and then I lay it out to them, and then they like, oh crap, how long has this been around? Okay, this is why I'm not working with you, you know. Um, I like Roger's question. Roger's got a question there too about what's the killer app for the vision
Yeah.
stuff. It's a great question. So one of the things that we've had a bit of an aha moment on within our company and the technicians and the engineers that we've worked with is how actually proficient and efficient they are with AI tools today. Most of our technicians and engineers out there quite happily punching away on Claude and doing stuff and hand building stuff, and the way I describe it is it's a little bit like, when Excel first came out and all the technicians were working in Excel and making all sorts of great charts and graphs and analyses and stuff. They've migrated to AI at a great rate of knots. And so, to answer Roger's question a little bit, part of our analysis is, to be honest, me as a product person may not actually know what that killer app is, but one of the things I'm finding is the technicians using their AI tools do know. And that's the fascinating space at the moment, is what they're using AI for and how they're using it. But
Well,
to do what they're doing, they need the data.
therein lies that was the magic right there. It used to be this concept called a killer app, and the tables have flipped now, and that people want to create their own app or they want to modify their own app, and they can't. They can't do it because the data that underlies apps is designed only for that app.
Right.
And people are like, what do you mean I can't deconstruct and reconstruct a new app that works for me? And it's like, you can't. You can't. And so the killer app, there might be someday one unifying amazing killer app. But right now, what people want is they simply want the ability to customize for themselves, and they're finding that AI allows them to do that. Oh, but then AI runs into these brick walls or paywalls or data architectures that are prohibitive from AI to be able to get to it. And and so it's if there was a killer app that would point out all of the brick walls and all of the walled gardens that make the data unavailable, wow, those walled gardens would come down right, just incredibly fast because everybody want to participate in it. But hoping for a one killer app is not a great reason to. It's that there's a million different very frustrated users that can't get the answers that they would like to be able to have. And one killer app is not going to then change how data architectures work. What we're advocating is that here's a way to get back to basics of how data can be organized, including BACnet, and to the point that y'all have talked about, ASHRAE has endorsed knowledge graphs as a way to represent BACnet, which is fabulous for all of us who love us some knowledge graphs. ASHRAE has endorsed that, and but in order to give people the opportunity to create their own apps, whatever they feel like is their magic app, their killer app, you got to re-architect how data works, and that's what we're advocating for. It's not what everybody wants, but we feel like it's a real important step in the right direction.
So my analogy for you, Rick, I agree with you 100%, by the way. And my analogy for you is Excel. People thought Excel was a killer app, but Excel wasn't the killer app. Why it was what it was and why everyone loved it was because I could put my data into this tool and create my report and my dashboard and my graph and my analysis. From my perspective, Excel wasn't the killer app. It's what I did with it and what data analysis that I did was my killer app because that was the value. Excel was just the tool, but it got somehow or another along the way. They said, "Oh, Excel was the killer app." No, you just enabled me to do what I wanted to do, which is really where the killer and the value is. Not Excel. Excel itself is just a blank sheet of paper that starts with a cursor. Okay, terrific. And what did Excel do? Great way to get all the data I can get, right? All the different ways I can import data into Excel. Um, so anyway, yeah. So I'm with you. It's not. I don't see someone building an Excel tool. Excel's out. This is the answer. I could argue, we've done that. It's AI. Um,
Oh yeah, I mean, you know how I feel about spreadsheets. VisiCalcs,
loved
right?
it.
Lotus 123.
One thing I was thinking back to this diagram is that we were mentioning at the earlier that we've really been focused on one and two, basically for the past, I don't know how many decades. And it's kind of interesting because in a way we haven't had this view of 3, 4, and 5. We certainly haven't had 3. We've had 5, but maybe our view of outcomes have been very too narrow. Because we were very focused on the silo. So the 5 isn't the 5 of what we're looking at now. And the governed and secure, I think 30 years ago, we didn't know how to spell those words. So we were just doing 1 and 2 with almost no destination.
Well, there was a destination for a while, and we got really focused on energy savings,
Right.
and that was good. But what I think people are realizing now is energy savings is nice, but having the building do what it's supposed to do, that's actually more interesting than saving energy while doing it. And
I modify you a little bit. Having the building do what it's supposed to do most efficiently.
well, yeah, which was part of the original
Yeah.
design, by the way. They were thinking about it because they didn't build the building to be 5 times bigger than what it was or 5 times warmer or whatever. They actually had efficiency in mind when they designed a building. Um, and then, but the killer app, or people thought that the killer app was going to be energy efficiency, and I think we've proven that that's not enough of a motivator to get all the ducks lined up.
Yeah, the problem I've always had with the energy efficiency, and one of the reasons it became the focus is because it was easy to measure. You could put a meter on it, right? And you could put like, okay, you've reduced, I see the number before and I see the number now, and you've made an impact. I get it, right? And it was easy to put some quantification. It's hard to put the quantification on all those other things that we talk about.
Well, I don't know if you guys remember my diatribe over the past 5 years complaining about how enterprise technology has been a trillion-dollar business in the world in all different vertical markets. But only when we get to our cretinous little corner of the world are people compelled to have a hard payback, right? Where was the hard payback when IBM brought, accounting automation or PeopleSoft or uh, Oracle? Any enterprise software has always had in other verticals soft value propositions. And I think that what we're getting to is maybe, these real estate cretins are finally reaching the tipping point where they can see the value that everyone else has seen for decades. Sorry for that.
Nah, you're right.
And it never was technology just for technology's sake over in the IT side either. Although sometimes you wonder, and it's just like, oh, email is so much fun. I've got to have this.
But guys,
Yeah, can you turn it off, please?
yeah, let me point out, Jim, it's look at PeopleSoft and Salesforce and so on and so on. These are, I don't want to overuse the word, but killer apps. They're operational apps that businesses, when they see them, get excited because they intuitively understand that manually assembling data and trying to operate your business with in a manual fashion is going to be inefficient. So when they look at a Salesforce or they look at an accounting, a NetSuite, right? They intuitively grasp, oh, I got to have this. This is the way to run my business. And in the 30, 40 years that we've been doing what we've been doing, are we really running buildings? No, we're keeping the lights on and we're regulating temperature. We're not running and managing the buildings. Okay. And that's where I think where the potential by getting to AI, I think it's going to unleash because I'm already seeing it. I'm seeing some of the initial apps that are coming out because they're taking advantage of AI. All of a sudden, we're now going to have our version of killer apps for running buildings, and it's going to change the conversation. People are going to see the apps and like, I got to have that. I get it. Where do I sign up?
Well, a lot of that has to do with getting information from other silos.
Mm.
So, we have a
Oh,
lot of us
absolutely.
have been trying to expand, that's my escape from the janitorial closet argument, that if we had more data, if we had more value, if we could put this together,
Right.
then we could uh, basically offer that broader value proposition. But what I've found over the years is even when we can get the data and offer broader value propositions, the problem is siloing in our own vertical. So the
Right.
management of building operations in this whole area, no matter how wide you want to draw that circle around it, is very parochial in their thinking, Steve.
Yeah.
So it's hard to get them to see how they could operate their business because they're so focused on the little vertical that they do. And when you get up to the enterprise level, once again, it's just the heat and we don't care about it, right? Well, if
Yeah.
energy is 1% of what I do, I can't be bothered.
Yeah. I guess all I'm saying, Jim, is I think it's like lighting a fuse. I just think the work we're doing under the hood is lighting the fuse and AI is striking the match. And all of a sudden you're going to have a lot of apps emerging that because they've been enabled to exist. That's my hope. And so once they exist, people the C-suite's going to see this stuff and they're going to finally get it. I
Yeah,
gotta
well,
have
maybe
yeah,
I
yeah,
agree with you. I think it's
yeah.
very exciting, and AI might just be the electroshock therapy that this
Right.
group of people needs
Yeah,
to see the light, right?
right, so to speak.
Right?
Electroshock.
I'm going to
There's
steal
this.
that one. I'm going to steal that one, Jim.
I coined them for you as fast as I
I,
can,
I
Andy.
use them all the bloody time, man.
I think if you read what Kimon's been writing here and the basic concept of turning everything into a digital asset and then having it accessible through knowledge graphs and some of the stuff they've been taking to Washington and the ideas that you can quickly change systems once you've met that goal, that you can actually bring in systems that you've not even anticipated to bring in, and they can basically configure themselves. This is just huge because we all know how hard it is to actually change one of these systems once you have it. I mean, before it was always just rip and repair, but actually by getting that data out, there's a whole level that we eliminate rip and repair. And I think that's a big value selling point that we need to all talk about is that your buildings are getting old. You got all of this legacy stuff. You do have some links that will bring you forward, such as BACnet. BACnet is now growing and supports some of these new technologies. Once you get that data in a format that AI can work with it, then other vendors can take that and in front of you actually change the system. So what we normally would be into 2 and 3 year renovations to upgrade these systems, if we can kind of achieve some of these goals and turn everything into a digital asset, that wow, you can actually do some significant change in a matter of moments, or as he cites, days, which is probably a more reasonable goal. But completely changing the operating system in a building in a couple of days is huge.
But I think the key message, I think, well, I was focused on, I agree with you, Ken, but by going down this path and having AI, and back to my point about our technicians are doing it anyway, is you're bringing on a whole bunch of new folks who are going to be able to get access to that data and do all sorts of interesting stuff, right? And Kristen kind of points it out there too, right? Easy apps, more innovation. The more people, and that's part of our problem, right? Is we could do all that integration in the past and we could put it all into dashboards and bring it all forward, but we gave all that information, that data to the guy buried in the basement, right? And no one else could touch it. And what I'm seeing with AI is that it's changing like, no, a whole bunch of guys are playing with it and bringing up all sorts of interesting things I hadn't even thought of, from that perspective. So that, back to your point, Steve, that's what I'm seeing as the hope too, right? By enabling this stuff, I'm going to see a whole bunch of new people getting involved with the data and going back to the Excel. Here's my data. Here's my Excel spreadsheet.
Now, forward to Python, actually. Let's go to Python. Okay. And one of the things we are showing in the PAE building is that all the different systems are being exposed, and and the owner, who happens to be an engineering firm, is actually writing their own apps right now. And so there's an environment for them to be able to run the app on the IBB and to be able to get data from multiple different systems. That I think is going to be like the match. I think somebody said it, or the spark or the match or whatever. Is there'll be this, oh look, I can use Python to write my own apps, and I don't have to go learn a secret language or pay for a secret class or whatever, take a secret pledge or whatever legacy systems require. Not making fun of the legacy systems, well, kind of am, but the ability to have that sort of freedom, because you now have access to all these different systems, is something that I think will be really one of the main stories of the PAE project itself.
So you're saying that Python is the new BASIC?
You know that's where it's going.
That's basically it, right?
It basically is.
Because 30 years ago, that word would have been basic. You learn basic. That's kind of the
You
language.
said basic the very first time last week. I was like, that's where my brain went. I was like, no, Python.
Cool. Ken, do you want to wrap this up? Because we're at the top of the hour.
Wow, we went a lot of directions, but there was some concurrence that AI is leading us, and it's going to define better what we need and how we have to free that data. Actually, Tristan made a comment in chat there that that's really what it's about, is freeing the data. And I think it's making that much more important and much more a basic requirement of what we have to do to move forward. And I think Kimon's writing some interesting stories, as is the asset management people. They're starting to tell that story and get it right. So I think we just got to keep moving it and see what we're going to talk about next week.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ken. And with that, we'll bring this to a wrap. We'll get the video up the next day or so. I hope everybody has a great week. We'll see you again next week.
All right.
Bye all.
All right. See you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.